Yeah, died on the 6th, I suppose.
We're getting funny in the back of my car. I'm sorry, honey, if I
Really tough loss for people, especially in my generation, because I'll explain why actually it's time. We're going to dedicate this episode, I suppose, mostly to the great Eddie Van Halen. Yeah. So I figured instead of doing today's day in history, we'll do the chronology of Van Halen albums. So people who might not be quite as familiar with the music will understand the output and how prolific they were as a band, and him especially since he wrote all the music. We have Van Halen 1, which has songs such as Running with the Devil, Jamie's Crying, cover of the Kinks' You Really Got Me, and it has the famous Eruption, which for people want to get a feel for how much he revolutionized the guitar. That song was made in 1970. It was probably recorded in 77. And if you listen to other songs that were around in 1977 and other music that was out at that time, and then you listen to Eruption by Eddie Van Halen, I imagine, because I was only 3, so I didn't get into them till I was a little bit older, I imagine hearing that for the first time, if you're somebody in high school and all of a sudden you pop in Eruption, it has to be mind-blowing to hear that compared to what was the soup du jour. So February 10th, 1978 was Van Halen 1. March 23rd, 1979 was Van Halen 2. Songs on that album that were famous were Beautiful Girls, Dance the Night Away, several others. Women and Children First, which is Everybody Wants Some on it. That was March 26, 1980. Fair Warning, which Unchained is probably the most famous song from that album, was April 29th, 1981.
I think that was one of the first Van Halen songs I learned on guitar.
The Islanders used to come out to that. They would just blare that riff and they would come out. I mean, that was what's called the Brown sound. It was a type of sound that he got, and that song is the real signature of that sound. Diver Down, April 14th, 1982. That has their cover of Pretty Woman on it, which was probably the biggest hit on that album. Also has one of my favorite songs, Little Guitars, which is one of my favorite Van Halen songs, and several others. 1984 was their biggest hit with David Lee Roth. That had Jump, Panama, Hot for Teacher, and several others. That came out on January 9th, 1984. Then the switchover, one of the biggest changes in rock history. I guess you had the Bon Scott to Brian Johnson change in AC/DC, but I would even say that the Van Halen changeover was even bigger as far as the news goes. That was really a big event when Sammy Hagar took over for David Lee Roth and Van Halen, because at that point Van Halen had reached the pinnacle. Jump was a #1 hit. That was the only #1 hit that band ever had as far as a single. Their albums went to #1. But the only single they ever had that was a #1 was Jump. So they were at the pinnacle of their career with David Lee Roth, and he left the band. So it was huge when Sammy Hagar came in. And they hit a home run. 5150 came out in 1986. That album has, hit after hit. It had Dreams, Love Walks In, Best of Both Worlds, on and on and on. And really one of the main reasons for the breakup was David Lee Roth wanted Eddie to stay like a guitar hero and keep all the songs guitar-based, and he wanted to delve more into the songwriting and the craft of songwriting, so he would incorporate more keyboards into the music and stuff. But 5150 was a huge hit. Then OU812 came out in 1988. Then For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge, 1991. Balance, 1995. And they were having those albums that had Right Now and a bunch of other songs on it. I mean, every album they put out from Van Halen 1 until Balance, so from 1978 to 1995, every album they put out had tons of hits on them. So at that point, Sammy Hagar left the band. And then you had Gary Cherone, who was the lead singer of a band called Extreme, took over for one album, Van Halen 3, and that's panned as their worst album. It really just didn't do well, and that was it for him. He had one tour with the band. They actually played well on the tour, but the album just didn't do anything. And then David Lee Roth came back, and in 2012, they released A Different Kind of Truth, which actually went to number 2. So that was a hit album as well. And that is the chronology of the Van Halen canon.
Wow.
So, to discuss the band themselves, I was glad also I do this podcast with my oldest son, and we had an opportunity to go together and see Van Halen. Unfortunately, it was well after their prime. I don't remember the year we saw them. I think it was 2007. But it was well after the prime of the band. But still, they sounded good.
I thought it was awesome.
Yeah. They were always a great live band. Sometimes David Lee Roth in the prime years would get so wasted that he was a little loose on stage, but overall it was like an experience. When you went to a Van Halen concert, it was like going to a party. And that was how they intended it, because they started as a bar band and a backyard party band in California. They used to play in all the Spanish parties too. They played in some strip bars. They played at backyard keg parties.
They played everywhere.
They did. And then, Gene Simmons from Kiss saw them and had heard about them and signed them.
Pretty smart.
Yeah. And there was a legendary story. They had opened up for Black Sabbath on their first tour. And
Imagine seeing that.
apparently, though, they blew Sabbath off the stage, where Sabbath started to get annoyed because they didn't want to follow Van Halen during that tour. People were just like,
They were getting
jaw
hammered
dropping.
by
And in those days, they were so good live because they were, lean, mean, and hungry, and playing like exactly like the album. And they just they sounded amazing. So, I was glad I got to take you to see them. And some memories that I have of this band were, going back to second grade. My mother used to put me in, what like these concert jerseys look like. They have like the 3/4 sleeves that are black.
Yeah.
Then they have like the white shirt with
Yeah.
Well, in the 70s and 80s, they were like these decals they would put on these shirts were very popular. They'd be like sparkles and stuff, and the picture was David Lee Roth like leaning back, and it said Van Halen. And I was in second grade. That was my first inkling of the band. And then I remember I used to take my radio to bed with me, put it under the covers so I could listen to something falling asleep. And I heard Jump, and it was the first time I ever heard it. And instantly hearing that keyboard riff and everything else, it just kind of got me hooked. And then all through high school, the first keg party, people call them open house parties, keg parties. Remember, I was in 9th grade. I went to the first one that I had, a friend of mine had. And it was a Van Halen cover band. So they were just like any party that you went to, any type of hanging out, like if you're hanging out in a parking lot, a lot of that went on in those days. People would hang out with their cars in a parking lot and just crank the stereos up, drink beers, hang out. And it was always one of the main bands that were played were Van Halen. And what was another interesting fact about the band, when the 80s went into the 90s and you had grunge take over, they were one of the only bands that didn't lose any popularity. They maintained the level of popularity.
Everybody loved them forever.
Yeah, what's interesting is they kind of they were at the beginning of the transfer when you hear like this big 70s bands and then you have punk. But before that 80s explosion of all the hair bands and the California sound, really Van Halen was the first band signed in that area. They were signed before Motley Crue. They were like the first. And then all those bands said, holy cow, these guys got signed.
Motley Crue went to a party with
David Lee, that was in the movie, right? He was, But Eddie was as a young guitarist, the story is basically he would just stay in his room at all times, play his guitar. He was a real craftsman. Like he was in it for the instrument. He liked the partying, he liked everything, but he really mastered the instrument and just apparently every waking moment he had. Even up through their career, like he had his home studio and he was always in there jamming and all
he made his own guitar.
Yeah, they all had the cigarette burns in them. Even the replicas they put them out with the cigarette burns in them, and just a real craftsman. And Sammy Hagar, who was the second singer, they actually, what's interesting is most Van Halen fans I think I would say more than 50% prefer the David Lee Roth era because the songs were so it was like a new sound. I mean, it was they were raw. He was a real wicked lyricist. You know, they had a real bite to them, the songs. Sammy Hagar, they became a little more mainstream, but they had more hits with Sammy Hagar. So they really lost nothing when they transferred from Roth to Hagar. But I mean, I bought a record from my friend, 1988. I bought the album OU812, and that has When It's Love on it, Finish What You Started, a couple other hits. And I wanted that so bad, and I didn't have money to buy my own so I would go to his house and just kind of make him play it all the time. But it was just, when I met your mom, the tape that I had in my car, the second that I had got out of the car and met her, was Van Halen 1. I mean, it was just, that band was, chock full of memories for me. So, do you have any particular songs that you like of the band? I know it really wasn't your generation, but I mean,
I like a lot of stuff.
You like guitars, and you're a great guitarist yourself. So
I think Unchained is a great riff.
Always
did.
That's my favorite riff
it's
by him.
So building.
Yeah. That sound really, when, I watch a lot of guitar shows where they kind of go over the gear and they go over sounds that the guitarists get more so than like the cultural aspect of the bands.
Also, certain things I like about Eddie Van Halen are kind of weird though. Like I like when he was like, "That's my fucking hip."
Yeah.
When he was arguing, I guess, with David Lee Roth.
Yeah, he got, unfortunately.
No, it wasn't even that serious. It was just like a quick thing. But I remember seeing that as a little kid.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was funny.
That band could not, the Van Halen brothers were notoriously difficult to work with, apparently. And they just, originally Eddie was the drummer and Alex was the guitarist when they were kids, and then they switched over. But, Alex is a great drummer in his own right. When you listen to Van Halen, he has...
he gets left out of, I see all the time they do the John Bonham comparison.
Yes.
And they always leave Alex Van Halen out of the equation.
He's phenomenal. And we
I'd
saw him live.
That to WBAB on their Instagram. They always have, who's the better drummer, John Bonham or Neil Peart or someone else like Keith Moon or John Bonham.
Yes.
But it always goes back to John Bonham.
Yes.
But Alex Van Halen, to me, impressed me more than Metallica. A lot as a kid.
When
I
we
remember
saw
Hot
them
for the Teacher.
Yeah.
And I used to think that was a motorcycle.
Yeah.
That was just him cranking double bass pedals. So
when we saw them
that's
live,
another thing I love about Van Halen.
Yeah. So. When we saw them live, he really impressed me tremendously.
He's in the pocket on everything.
But that sound, I mean, even something like Jamie's Crying, where he comes in with the drums, he was a phenomenal drummer.
Like Michael Anthony. I think
great
without
band.
that rhythm section,
great
Eddie
band.
Van Halen wouldn't have been able to. Because if you listen to Running with the Devil, he's just flying around on the guitar. Where they're just bam, bam,
steady.
Whole song.
Very steady.
Yeah.
Michael Anthony was the secret weapon in that band because not only was he very steady, which allowed Eddie to kind of go through his pyrotechnics on the guitar, but his harmony singing was the secret weapon. All Van Halen songs, when you listen to their good songs, which they really don't have too many bad ones, when you listen to a stereotypical Van Halen song, you're looking for a couple of things. The early days, you're looking for David Lee Roth would usually have a little talking part where he'd say I like the way the lines run up the back of your stockings. Always right. Here's my pencil. Always a little aside. You're listening to his howls and his whoops and stuff. Then
he kind of sings like Eddie Van Halen plays
the
guitar.
They complement each other fantastically. You're right. And then you're obviously, first and foremost, you're listening to the guitar because he is a master at the instrument. Then the secret weapon of all great Van Halen songs are the harmonies and the chorus.
Yep. It's unique.
Jamie's Crying, Running with the Devil, even the way they redid the Kinks. Their harmonies are strong, and that is all.
And that says something, too, about the Kinks, that they would want to ever cover.
Yeah, they covered a lot of Kinks. In fact, on Diver Down, one of my favorite songs
That's pretty cool. That's actually interesting.
Yeah, Where Have All the Good Times Gone is one of my favorite Van Halen songs, and it's actually a Kinks cover. Yeah. They loved the Kinks. And one of Eddie's favorites was Dave Davies, and
Jimi Hendrix.
He liked Clapton a lot.
Because I know that Jimi Hendrix was one of the first to do that thing.
Yeah.
The little tap thing.
Well, that was, it's funny. David Lee Roth used to tell him, please stand with your back to the crowd. At the time, tapping was not. Yeah, tapping was not a popular style, and he didn't. People at first weren't really sure what he was doing, but he really he was a great rhythm player. Also, he gets. It's with Eddie. He was not only.
He was very versatile.
Yeah, and Sammy Hagar has gone on record time and time again saying the guy was like a top-notch songwriter. He just wrote. He hook after hook in those songs. Like, you listen to the intro to Panama, and then what he does in the middle of the song. Like, the guy was that guitar lick in Panama. I mean, I remember coming back from Shea Stadium. I went with a friend of mine to a Mets game. Came back to my house, and my parents were having a barbecue. And my friend had brought with him the 1984 Van Halen CD, and we put on Panama. And I remember hearing that, like, for me, I don't really know how to play guitar, but the part of the riff where it's like, I was like, what the heck? It was just such a weird sound, and I was instantly hooked on it. But
I predict a huge boom in his equipment. Yeah. Because he has his own line of guitars and amplifiers that they sell. And I think you're going to see a lot more of those guitars selling, for sure.
What was interesting was yesterday at the gym, for the last few weeks, I've been just listening to Metallica. And, just something to listen to other than the crap they have on the radio. For some reason yesterday, I'm like, you know what, Van Halen's another band where you can listen to like 3 hours of their songs and they're still...
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden I left and I heard he died. I was like, that is the fucking weirdest thing. It's like
I would have never anticipated that.
Yeah. Well, the reason I was thinking he got bad was that when they were planning to get back together again with Michael Anthony, and they were actually supposed to play Yankee Stadium and do a huge coming out tour with them. And then
amazing that all those years later they could play a place like Yankee Stadium.
Yeah, well, that band, like I said, they were like...
They never went out of style.
No. I remember listening to the radio. I was 10 years old, and the guy on... It was BLI that they were on, like, rock radio, pop radio. They were just everywhere. All these kids, like my friend Joe was he was like one of those kids that could play every instrument in elementary school. Yeah. I remember him bringing that keyboard, and it was always... Dan, 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 dan. He was always playing the jump riff. Yeah. So I was listening to the radio DJ, and he said, yeah, Van Halen just played to the largest crowd in music history. They played to 1 million people at some, I don't remember what it was. It was like the US Festival or something. But
wow, 1 million people.
I remember here, and they were so massive in those days. And then Eddie really crossed over when he played on Beat It. And that was huge when he went on stage with Michael Jackson on the Victory Tour. Deal. Yeah, and Michael Jackson was with the Jackson 5.
That's also a great song.
Yeah, it is. It is.
For a pop song.
My brother's band covered that song.
Yeah, that's a song if you cover.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a hit if you play it right.
Yep. Eddie said, you got a call from Quincy Jones, and Quincy Jones said, Michael wants to talk to you, and he thought it was a joke. But then Michael Jackson got on and he said, I want you to play on my song, and he did. But Eddie was so massive in those days. Yeah. I mean, he really was the 80s. Like,
what a name.
He had the perfect name, and his middle name was Lodewijk.
I know.
So Edward Lodewijk Van Halen. And that's why David Lee Roth, their name used to be Mammoth. And David Lee Roth, they were trying to come up with a name, and he's like, Van Halen's a perfect music name.
Yeah, it is.
And
it really is.
But the thing with that band,
what a shame.
Yeah, it's a big loss. And the thing is, I remember, just to show you, because again, it's really not your generation, but thank God you have good taste in music. Thank God, and good music. And I remember when I was in elementary school and I went to camp. You always would look for the cool counselor to try to get into their group. And I remember I happened to luck out. I got the cool counselor, and he's talking about music and this. And I was like, oh, this guy's cool. His favorite band, Van Halen. And he would just, dude, you guys, you know, we were kids. We were in like elementary school, and he's like, you'll see. That band, and this was like 1983.
Everybody
82.
in that band, they're another group like Zeppelin where just
no
every
weak
single
links.
part, yeah, not one.
Yeah, yep, and
not one. It's amazing.
You know, they also like there's so many things.
I feel like they invented partying. Like they took it to the next
they
level.
were
From like Ozzy,
the ultimate party band.
Maybe Ozzy was able to keep up. Actually, though, I
They
don't know.
Van Halen was way bigger than Ozzy in the 80s. Way bigger.
No, I mean, as far as partying goes.
Oh yeah.
I feel like Ozzy was just a total disaster.
He was. Well, he was just like off the chain. You know, Motley Crue is another one who was off the chains. But Van Halen was known as like groupies, drugs, rock, drink.
A lot of whiskey.
Yeah, big time whiskey drinkers.
Yeah.
You know, and
that's crazy.
Yeah, they have a song, "Bring Your Whiskey Home," "Take Your Whiskey Home." On they were huge. David Lee Roth
was probably
was
drinking like a bottle of whiskey a day.
He was a
if
major
not more.
alcoholic. He
David
was
Lee
the
Roth?
biggest. No, Eddie Van Halen.
Oh, he was.
David Lee Roth was into coke and stuff.
I think they were all.
Yeah, they were. Eddie was a coke. You know, he said the coke used to help
That's
him
what made
stay
them
awake.
You know,
they had an
their whole
interview
rhythm was
and
like cocaine.
Yeah, he said that's what kept him awake, and then he said the drinking took away all his inhibitions, and he was able to do things musically that he said he wouldn't normally want to do. He'd be too nervous to try it, but regardless, they were known, like when you watch like Van Halen behind the stage, like from those days. There's cops, there's midgets, they had like a crazy scene behind stage. If you watch the video to Panama, they show you backstage, and those are real
events.
Yeah, like David Lee Roth with handcuffs, getting dragged out in a towel from the shower, and but they would always have like the midgets, like I said, and they'd have like,
they invented a lot.
They had a little midget bringing out Jack Daniels to Michael Anthony on stage, and he would. It was like awesome. Total party band. Van Halen was the ultimate
There's
80s party band.
With that.
They were the ultimate 80s party band, and like,
what year did they get started?
74. 74, 75.
So by the time Motley Crue saw them in L.A., they were already like veterans.
Van Halen was they were
It's crazy that they were out in 74.
Yeah, well they were just playing. Their first album came out in 78. So.
And that's Running with the Devil?
That's Running with the Devil, Jamie's Crying, Eruption, yeah, all that stuff. You Really Got Me Now, Atomic Punk, Ice Cream Man. Van Halen 1 is probably, with Appetite for Destruction, the two greatest debut rock albums of all time.
Appetite for Destruction was something else.
Yeah. But if you look at Van Halen 1, song by song by song, there's just no weak songs.
It's funny, too, because anybody else that does that tap stuff, like nowadays, like a lot of hardcore metal bands, I feel like do that. But to me, it's like you're really ripping off this guy.
Well, that's the thing was, like I said.
He was the only one, I think, who can actually do it, and it's cool.
Yeah.
If I see other people doing it, I'm just like,
Well, the thing is, like I said, what's a good way to really see how innovative he was like, put on, like, some, when you can do, like, the year in review and songs from 78. Put on what was on in 78. And then you put on Eruption. And it's like, whoa, They really get us.
The bottom line is, in those days, there was good music being made everywhere.
There was. You had disco, which was great.
Soul, you had blues, you had punk, you had everything.
Yep.
Still had Frank Sinatra.
Singer-songwriters. You had a lot of like the acoustic 70s stuff, which was great.
Bob Dylan and all those guys. Like, it was just.
But like,
time.
But like I said, imagine hearing Eruption. It was like.
Yeah, it literally it was like blew up like an eruption.
It really did. It just, there's not a guitarist alive that will say, when I heard Eruption, like even they had an interview with Mike McCready from Pearl Jam, and he's like, it sounded like it was from another planet. Like, it just was so different from what everybody was doing. And he was only 23 on that album. Yeah. He was a young guy when they started.
He was just rocking out.
Oh, my God. Yeah. And he, like, looked the part. He looked like a guitar hero. He had the long hair, the smile all the time, the kicks. He would always do those jump kicks and stuff.
Do you by any chance remember the show Dexter's Laboratory? That
I heard of it. I know,
Cartoon Network? There was like this like TV group of characters that he would watch that
Yeah.
were like the dynamic trio.
Yep.
And one of them was like the guitar god, and they called him Van Halen.
Yeah.
It's just
That name.
that means guitar god.
Yeah, it's
like a hieroglyph.
Yeah. Well, what's very interesting about him too, like there's so many things about this guy. It's like you can't overrate who he was. All the guys from the '70s, like the Keith Richards, the Jimmy Pages, the Pete Townsends, the big guitar guys from the '70s. When the '80s came around,
He was the only one they respected.
yeah, they kind of were like, it was like the new generation. They were snubbing him. Now they all became friends, but like at first, the old guys don't like the young guys coming
Right.
along, but nobody dared
talk about Eddie.
Yeah, he was like the untouchable one. Like that guy was.
He was serious.
Yeah, they just there's
Not
not
only
a,
was his like tapping skills crazy, but he could also transition to like using a pick and really hit those bluesy notes. Which is what's amazing is that he took that futuristic noise to that bluesy root.
Yep. The guy is.
He was into blues.
David Lee Roth on the Joe Rogan podcast had a great description for Van Halen. He goes, Van Halen music was the kind of music when you're wasted and you pull into a Burger King parking lot.
Yeah.
And you hear music blasting out of the back of the cars, everybody's partying.
That was it.
You hear Van Halen. And he's right. That's
even today.
Yeah, I mean,
in certain
I remember 9th grade walking into this guy's backyard, and it was the first keg party I was ever at. I was never at a party where there was like tons of beer and people. Like in 8th grade, like we would kind of hang out and drink, but it was just like a few friends. This was like the whole high school was there, and then it's like these like guys on this like stage playing, and they were playing "Ain't Talking About Love," and then they just did all Van Halen songs, and it was like that was. From my high school era, Van Halen was the people played Pink Floyd, they played Guns N' Roses, there were other bands, but the real party band was always Van Halen. They just and that's why when they played live, they tried to keep it like a party atmosphere because it was like going to see them was like a real
you were
party.
Going to party.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the backstage. I remember like Martha Quinn from MTV going back and she's like, it's crazy back here. And you just, David Lee Roth would have like lines of girls and
drugs.
Just, lines of drugs. Eddie was always whiskey and smoking nonstop, He was a chain
That
smoker.
all goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
When you get a taste of one, you want the other, and then you want the other, and then you want to,
I read the book called Running with the Devil by this guy Noel Monk, and he was the manager of Van Halen, and it really gave you a good backstage look at their rise from like a backyard band to this biggest band in the world. And in '84 they were the biggest rock band in the world, and man,
crazy.
He's like, we'd be over in Europe in some like Eastern European country, and he's like, and Van Halen came into town, and it was like party time. But Eddie, like I said, when he did Beat It with Michael Jackson, that was the first time. That was even before Run DMC and Aerosmith. Like that was 3 years before that, 4 years before that. Like
they were
crossed.
groundbreakers.
Yeah, they really were groundbreakers. They crossed over, and then when Eddie Van Halen and Valerie Bertinelli got married, they were like the first like rock star couple where she was an actress, he was a and it's just tough, Like I said, I Met Your Mom. That was like the tape that I was playing. It just brings back memories, and it's tough loss. And then I'm listening to the radio last night, and this guy Ben Shapiro, I was watching his review of Cardi B's what's the WAP song? Yeah. And I haven't heard the song yet, believe it or not. So I wanted to. Your grandfather told me you got to hear this crap, So Ben Shapiro, who his wife's a doctor, so he's like, I asked her what kind of vaginal problems these women had, and his wife was like, telling him like medical. So he was trying to help Cardi B out with some terms.
She needs help.
He's like, well, the smell that they're talking about, and like but it just made me realize. And then it's like, then you look and the next thing, Eddie Van Halen dies, and it's like, man, we are losing.
We're done.
I mean, you used to turn the radio on as a kid and you hear a new Van Halen song. It's like just.
And now this is what little kids are hearing.
Yeah, it just
can't even play.
That's
that on the
why
radio.
I really feel more sad than anything is because when you lose these types of guys, you know, they were so prolific. Like they were big in the late 70s. All through the 80s, they were huge. And then grunge hit, and their albums came out number one. They would sell out everywhere. It was like they never lost stride until they broke up.
I can't believe Grandpa's heard WAP.
Yeah, he told me, he goes, you got to hear this shit. You know, he's like,
it's not good.
Yeah.
It's actually straight up evil.
Yeah. I never heard it. He told me about it. He's like, did you hear this crap? Because I had mentioned about Biden talking to Cardi B. So he's like, did you hear this crap that she's got out? You know. So, but like I said, it's another reminder to me how much civilization is falling apart when I hear that,
We're deteriorating.
Yeah, when that's the music, and then you lose a guy like Eddie Van Halen who was,
just loss after loss.
Yeah, but he was, man, when you think of 80s, that Jump video was, and Panama and Hot for Teacher, and it was like round the clock, every hour you'd hear it and you'd see it, and it was, turn the radio on, it was on the radio. And then I went and saw a movie, Better Off Dead, with John Cusack. That was a very popular 80s movie, and there was a famous scene in the movie, and Everybody Wants Some. What's the other song off of that album? Have you seen Junior's Grades? What's that one? The one you were talking about before.
Hot for the Teacher?
No. It's a brain. I'll figure it out in a minute. But anyway, Everybody Wants Some, and then there's one. He does some crazy guitar licks in it. But anyway, that was in that movie, and there was like raisins dancing to it and stuff in the movie. It was like a weird scene, and he was just their music was everywhere. So very tough loss.
They also had a nice affinity for fast cars.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They were like big into the
Well,
cars.
the song Panama was actually about a car. It's not about, people think it's about a place, or it was about a car. And, there's a girl that I was friendly with in high school, and she used to bartend at Pace's in Port Jeff. Mm-hmm. I never knew Eddie Van Halen hung out there all the time. And,
I didn't know that either.
And she's like posting pictures of him in Pace's hanging out at the bar, and he's got his arms around these guys there, and he had his like long hair hanging down, and it was like 90s era.
Then.
Yeah, it was 90s era. And this other girl says, yeah, I'm driving on Main Street in Port Jefferson, and I'm looking over to the right, and there's a really cool red hot rod. So I'm looking at it, and some guy rolls the window down. He's like, you like my car? And she goes, holy shit, you're Eddie Van Halen. And he goes, yeah, how are you? Something. He goes, yeah, he hung out at Danford's all the time. So
that's crazy.
But they said that girl was there 10 years working. She said he was there every summer, hanging out. So... But yeah, they had big
That's
time.
Amazing.
Yeah, he had a cool Ferrari. Like when they did this show in '82, where it's called PM Magazine. It was a very early, like TMZ type of show, and it was they went to the house of Valerie Bertinelli and Eddie Van Halen, and they were talking about a young couple that was like popular, and then they went to look at his cars, and he had a nice Ferrari in the garage. He had some other, cars.
When I think of that, like, 80s model
Yep,
Ferrari,
that's what he had.
Van Halen.
He had a Ferrari Testarossa.
Yeah. Those are nice cars, though.
That's what he had.
Those are one of the only cars from the 80s that I'm like, wow,
yeah.
I like that.
Yep, I had a picture of it on my wall as a kid. It was one of my favorite.
That's a badass car.
Had, like, those vents on the side.
Yeah. Grand Theft Auto Vice City was a great game.
Yeah.
If only you were into video games, you would have loved it.
Yeah.
Because literally the radio stations
played all that
played
stuff.
exactly what was on at that time. And the cars and everything, and you're in Miami.
That's what it was like in the 80s. It was a great time, I'm telling you.
I feel
great
like
time to be alive.
In Miami in the 80s.
That's how everybody dressed.
Right.
I remember like my 6th grade graduation. I had a white jacket on.
Yeah, sleeves up.
Yeah. Sleeves up with like a pink shirt and like white pants. It was like, thought I was like Don Johnson or something.
That's crazy.
Yeah, but that's what kids wore. Mullet, long hair in the back, slick back in the front.
I mean, people wear some bizarre stuff today.
Yeah, but that's what kids wore.
Some things never die. Flannel never went away.
No.
Denim never went away.
Nope. Denim's been popular forever.
Yeah.
Flannel, popular forever.
Fake fur is still popular.
Yeah.
So that's like a look that never goes out either.
Denim in the 80s, they used to do, there was pinstripes where they used to put, like you'd have regular blue jeans and they'd put like different colored, they'd either be white or you'd have like blue and white pinstripes. Yeah. Then they would do stonewash or acid wash, and then they had two-tone where you'd have blue jeans in the back and then black jeans in the front, and they would have them together. Yeah, yep, those were popular for a while. Cavaricci jeans, denim has been around forever, but
Van Halen was into the bell bottoms.
Yeah. Well, he always had, it was the best look that he had was in '83, where you ever see that red guitar that he had? Yeah. He had overalls.
Yeah, I've seen the picture. It's like
and that was his '83 tour outfit. That's what he wore.
She was shredding.
Yeah, he would just wear no shirt with overalls. He looked the part of a rock god. Like there was, he really did. He was. If
he's in rock and he's in like is it Valhalla?
Yeah. Yes. When God went to the book and said, "Let me create a rock god,"
God.
Like, what would a rock god look like? And it's like Eddie Van Halen right there. It's like everything about him back in those days. He was like, good-looking guy, had in shape. We probably never touched the gym a day in his life.
Just built out. Built for success.
Yep. Totally had the smile. I mean, he was always smiling on stage. Always looked like he was having a good time. And when you talk to him, he really
probably was.
He was having a great time in those days. But like
back in those days, I don't think anyone cared about drug abuse or alcohol.
It was different. It was just different times.
Dennis Leary has a joke. He's like, back in those days, when you were getting sober, it still meant you smoked an ounce a week and drank a 12-pack a night.
Yeah.
And that's how it was.
When you watch. I was watching that PM Magazine interview with Valerie Bertinelli and Eddie Van Halen. He was wasted.
Yeah.
He wasn't acting like an idiot, but he was just like...
They were just partying all the time.
That's all they did.
See, nowadays, kids like to pretend like they do.
Yeah, and then show it to other people.
But the new thing is, like, these, like, the equivalent of, like, the pop culture today... They take things like Xanax, and they're just like zombied out.
Right.
And that's like what kids find cool now. It's really weird.
Yeah,
there's something off.
Yeah, he was a big drinker. He was, he went
back
to.
Then they were hyper alert.
Yeah, he went to. He went to like out. He had to get off the booze, but he was a big time drinker. I mean,
I think he drank probably.
Jack Daniels. That's what they drank. When you go back, they would always on the amps. Michael Anthony would bottle of Jack Daniels.
I think he was even a bigger drinker.
Yeah, and he actually turned out to be a pretty cool guy. Now
Michael
when
Anthony.
like when on the interviews and stuff, like he's really like very balanced and but he was the secret weapon in that band. Just
Yeah, he was great. Played one note.
Yeah, just ding ding.
Yep.
But his harmony singing was perfect, and they needed it because David Lee Roth was so loose live. And they needed, he would keep the songs on, with his voice. But they really, I always liked the songs from Hagar, but I was kind of like, nah, David Lee Roth era is way better. But I got to say, they really lost nothing. Like the songs,
awesome.
They were just great, And
besides that, the band was really the two brothers.
Yeah, you're right. That's who it was.
So it's not like.
But, yeah, they lost nothing, and they were huge. Like, when I was looking at the stuff, even in the 90s, like I said, I remember I was watching, like, the 93 MTV Music Awards, and they still got the biggest applause. But meanwhile, it's, like, right smack in the middle of the Pearl Jam, Nirvana, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains. Van Halen comes out, and it was like, boom. It's amazing to be able to make that transition, and that's a band that will never go away. When you can go through the eras, they came out. Think about what they came out in the year that Saturday Night Fever was out.
Right.
It's incredible. So, and
it's amazing how, like in '74, you had the Ramones blowing up.
Yep.
Well, not blowing up, blew up in a different way.
Right.
And then you had Van Halen, and you had all these things forming. Like Zeppelin was in their prime.
Yep.
Like. Jesus.
Well, Van Halen, like
I wonder
74,
if Zeppelin will
75.
ever do another little reunion there.
Well, they did that one 2012, I believe it was.
It was 2010.
Maybe 2010. I mean, it's been a while. Maybe it was even earlier. 2008. It was early.
They're old now, though.
It's
hard to do that.
It is, and they sounded pretty good in the reunion they did. You know who? You know what the problem is, and I get it. Really, for Robert Plant, that singing that he did in Zeppelin, like who's going to be in your 70s and hit those notes? Like ridiculous.
Well, what they did in the
they lowered their
key.
Yeah. And
that makes it a lot easier.
It does, but the songs don't have the same bite, you know. But the problem with the thing with Zeppelin was Plant lost that high register midway through Zeppelin. Like when you listen to later Zeppelin, he's still great, but it's just different style of singing. But like he's not going to come out and be able to do like Ramble On and hit that note that it's impossible.
What if he can?
Yeah, he can't. He hasn't been able to even like by 75 he wasn't able to.
He gets
I've
seen I watched the live performances and it's like I know it's not, but it's better than nothing.
No, I agree. I would still watch it. I would still watch it.
Imagine going to get to see that.
Yeah, well,
that's how I feel about Van Halen.
Yeah, well, I saw Page and Plant.
Never did. I have not.
Yeah,
I would love to.
I saw them twice, and they opened with the Immigrant Song into the Wonton Song.
If I could just see Jimmy Page play guitar,
well worth it. I actually saw
Eric
Page.
Clapton.
I saw Page 3 times. I saw him twice with Plant, and then once with the Black Crowes. They did all Zeppelin songs. Page was great. I
wonder what the Rolling Stones have been up to. They've had a lot of time to not tour.
Yeah, well, they were in the midst of touring because when Jagger got better, they were touring.
Everybody who's everybody hangs out east on Long Island.
Yeah, you're right.
It's crazy.
You're right.
It's crazy.
Stones,
you don't realize it
McCartney.
When we live here. But
McCartney lives out there. He lives in Amagansett.
You ever see a private limo? Someone's going there, like on the LIE when you get out there, you see nothing but limos.
They're all out there. John Lennon lived on Long Island for a while, Cold Spring Harbor. Yeah. It's not out east, but he still was on the island,
One of the world's most renowned chefs, Eric Ripert, lives in Sag Harbor.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful area, It's hard to believe, really.
Howard Stern.
Yeah. They're that, there's just, you live so close to an area that's that sought after.
Port Jeff is beautiful, though.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's very unassuming.
Yes.
Who would expect to see Eddie Van Halen hanging out at Danforth?
The girl said she had no idea. She was looking at the car because it was a real muscle car, hot rod, So she's just looking at it, and the guy rolled down the windows and was like, "You like the car or something?" She's like,
Eddie Van Halen was worth quite a bit of money at his time of dying.
Yeah.
That man they made money.
They made a ton of money because they sold so many albums.
Royalties.
Van Halen 1 sold it's one of the best-selling albums of all time.
I feel bad for his son Wolfgang because he was the one who announced.
Yeah. I can't believe that kid's 29.
That's crazy.
I remember.
It was what an amazing experience to be able to be on the stage with David Lee Roth.
Yeah,
Eddie Van Halen and Alex Van Halen, and you're 16, whatever, smacking a bass to Van Halen. That kid.
Yeah, pretty crazy.
That is crazy. And to him, it was no big deal because that's his dad and his uncle.
He did good
and his
for a kid.
Uncle,
he did well. For a 16-year-old kid, he sang, did the harmonies.
That's crazy.
But what was cool was song after song after song. It's there's just some concerts you go to and everybody's
there's a couple filler songs.
Yeah,
and stuff.
that was just
bam,
bam, bam. It's no bad songs. Somebody get me a doctor into it's God.
Ain't talking about
love. Just everything. Everything. It was great.
Yeah.
Unchained into Panama into Jamie's Crying into Running with the Devil. It's
and they still go out. Well, rather they did go out. They were playing for a party.
Yeah.
They never lost that.
No.
The party was welcome at Nassau Coliseum.
David Lee Roth reminds me of a carnival barker. The way he kind of comes out. Yeah.
He's crazy. He's just a crazy dude.
Yep. And Pantera,
Sammy Hagar
huge
Van
Halen
well too.
Yeah, he still sounds great.
He's got that tan.
Yeah, the guy looks.
He lives in Mexico, right?
Yeah, or
I think he has the tequila company in Mexico.
He does. He has a massive tequila company.
What's it called? Cabo Wabo.
Cabo Wabo, which happens to be a great song too. They wrote a song. But
they were into that whole vibe down there. So, like L.A.
Sammy Hagar, I used to not care for him, but I'll tell you, he has a great voice, and to this day, he sounds, when he sings, he sounds like he did. The guy lost nothing on his vocals. One of the only guys.
55.
Yeah, that was before
Van Halen.
Yeah, but that was right around that time. That was a big hit. He also had a great song called Rock Candy, which was in his first group that he was in, and it's a really cool rock song actually. But he was a very sought after guy when in those days. Like he always had a great voice. He was also a great guitar player, Sammy Hagar.
Yeah, and, he played rhythm with them.
Yeah,
a lot.
And he, but he was saying, Eddie would throw a rock at his window because they moved next door to each other. And he said it would be 2 a.m. He'd be laying in bed and he'd hear a pebble.
Yeah.
And Eddie would be like, Sam, And then Sammy Hagar would come down here. And they'd go sit on the porch, drink beers. And Eddie would play him a new song that he was working on. And it would be finish what you started. That's how they wrote that. He's like, Eddie was knocking on my door in the middle of the night.
All the time. That's what it. That's
yeah. He goes, that's how we wrote that song. He threw a rock up my window. We came downstairs, and I came downstairs, and we were just chilling out on the porch drinking beers, and Eddie played me the song, and I wrote the lyrics, and the next day we recorded it, and it went to top 10 hit. It was a massive hit.
Well, that's what they say. I like listening to Keith Richards talk sometimes because he's very honest about the songwriting process, and it's it should take no more than 2 minutes.
Yep.
It's an idea that you just turn over into the studio.
Yep. Eddie was a musician's musician. He was just never not.
They probably recorded very fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nowadays, it takes these clowns on a computer 6 months to make one computer-generated song. It's what the hell?
He was old. There was he was a guy he would always tinker with the like you said. Yeah. He'd have that's
how he got his sound.
Sammy Hagar would say I'd walk in, he'd have amps torn apart and rebuilt, and he'd have all these wires going. He goes, it looked like a lab.
Out of his marbles.
Yeah, he's you walk in. Well, there was a great Howard Stern show where Van Halen came on, and Eddie was. It was the mid '90s. He was blown. It was the worst era. He was really
having a tough time.
Yeah, and Howard couldn't control him, and he's walking around trying to play with the knobs, and his hair was down in his face. He had a bathrobe on, and Howard's Howard's Eddie, settle down, and he was out of his mind then.
That was probably because he just came off of partying for 25 years.
He was
and
really
was still partying.
It was he had
he
used to wear this hat that was it looked like a court jester's and he had that on with jeans with no shirt with a bathrobe, and he just walked into Howard Stern's studio, and but Eddie Van Halen could kind of do what he wanted. He was that that was the thing. He really
he seems like a guy who would have loved Long Island. I never knew that, and I'm thinking about
I never knew it till today. I read it online, and the person's he
when
was...
When you think about what a guy like that would be looking for, Long Island definitely has that.
They said he was on Long Island every summer for 10 years, just hung out. And,
nothing wrong with Paces either.
Yeah, but it was a cool picture. There was 2 young dudes, looked like they were in their early 20s, and he was just hanging out at the bar with his arms around him, And very few people disliked Eddie Van Halen that met him. He was.
I bet he was a good time. A lot of fun to be around.
Yep, and even Pantera, Dime's one of his biggest influences. Eddie Van Halen, every style of music, it's just the guy, really had.
He would have those yellow sports coats.
Yeah.
With, the black stripes and sleeves up.
That was in the Jump video.
Guitar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Denim jeans with patches on them and stuff.
Oh, it was bizarre.
Yeah. Yep.
But it was awesome.
He had his own look, his own sound. He was a guitar god.
That is what makes him so cool.
Yeah.
Is that in the 80s, just like today, just everything becomes generic in a sense. You know what I mean? Van Halen was anything but generic. They were, you know what I mean? They really created everything that was them.
They were just, and they
fed off of no one.
Yes, he never brought another guitarist on stage.
No.
It was always him, And
no, it's true.
You know, even the keyboard parts, he would play keyboards and then run over on the guitar.
Geddy Lee
too.
It's pretty cool.
Yep.
I always liked that.
Yep. But I mean, I remember, like, if you listen to a song like When It's Love, the beginning is almost like a California Girls type of beginning, where it's like layer upon layer of just cool keyboards, and then he comes in with a cool riff. Like, the guy was just, what a stud on the guitar, man. Such a
Music
shame.
has lost a lot of greats.
It really has. Since 2016 was a tough year. Yep. We lost a lot of musicians that year.
Well, I am so fortunate because I've gotten to see Paul McCartney.
Yep.
I've gotten to see Van Halen.
Yep.
And someone else I got to see, which I'm very thankful for, is Dr. John.
Yes.
What an obscure legend to have the privilege to get. I shook his hand.
Yep. Well, that was why I took you to see McCartney, because I had already seen him.
Yeah, like that's like seeing. Like,
but I wanted to make sure, like,
it's
I took my kids at least to see, you know, and my wife to see him. You know, she always liked him, so it was cool to. But I was really wanted you and your brother to see him. I wish I could have taken, you know, the little ones, but they were too young. But
you know who was playing at that venue that I saw Dr. John the next day too, which would have been cool to get to see, is America.
Oh yeah. That's a great band, you know.
Yeah.
They were funny because they were very 70s hippie type of music. Then all of a sudden they had this comeback hit in '82. You Could Do Magic.
Yeah.
And that song was massive. It was a top 10 hit, top 5 hit. And
A Horse with No Name is a great song.
Yeah. That was their style. And then You Could Do Magic was like this, like,
different
ear candy that was just always. It was a great song, though. I used to like that song. That was '82, I think. But
great little place. I think it was. It'll come to me, the name of the venue though. It was a classic little venue though that a lot of.
How was Dr. John live? Was it?
It was awesome.
Yeah.
I mean,
how many people did he play with?
He had a band going on. You know, like he had a couple people on the horns.
Yeah, that's what I was
drums,
wondering.
This and that. But one of the most notable moments was like when he plays Right Place, Wrong Time.
Yeah.
He has this little red keyboard, and he's like kind of chubby.
Yeah.
And he would go din it, and then he would flip over to to the piano.
Yeah.
But it's like watching his body. It was like pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And when I shook his hands were like ice cold.
Wow.
It was weird.
Huh.
And he plays with a skull.
Yes, that I've seen.
On his piano. He's a badass.
Yeah.
Like, he's cool.
Yep. He's definitely got a cool style.
His style was like another one who was. He doesn't get a lot of credit. I don't know why. But in New Orleans he does. Little bit of a tangent for Van Halen, but
no, but it's music is music. You know?
Yeah, it's right. And it's a shame that we lost him. I really liked him.
And those guys are musicians. Like, I like guys that are like real musicians where they could.
Dr. John played guitar. He was a great guitarist too.
Yeah, like I love guys that, you know, why the reason, you know, there's always an argument. Really, the guy that Eddie Van Halen gets kind of, people say who's better, Randy Rhoads, because he was around in the 80s. But the difference was Randy Rhoads couldn't, you know, you could say Randy maybe was technically better because he was classically trained or whatever. Eddie was a songwriter. The guy constructed beautiful
Eddie was like the
songs.
self-made guitarist.
Right. He could make a song from zero to number one on the radio.
Classically trained is like you're embedding yourself with these tactics. To play guitar, versus someone who's born with a natural knack. It's a different world. Eddie Van Halen all day.
Yeah,
Randy Rhoads is all right.
I liked the fact that Eddie was just the songs he wrote. Like, I remember listening to like a rough take of Panama before they had the song. It was just him writing the song, and it was like, man, he just put these parts together, and it was crazy. He was just so talented. And it was a great thing where he played on David Letterman with Paul Schaefer, and there was no singer. And it was from 1985, where it was just Eddie and the band from Letterman doing Panama with no singer. And you really hear the guitar, and wow, sounded just like the album, except minus the singer. But It's just.
I bet he was a sick acoustic guitar player.
Yeah.
Too.
Well, if you ever listen to Spanish Fly, there's certain little songs that he did on the albums there was a great song on Diver Down called Cathedral, where he tried to the sound that he got felt it sounded like a cathedral, so that's what he just did very cool things on the instrument. And when you went to a Van Halen show, usually everybody would wait for the solo, and it was just a great loss. So really not too much more to say. I just wanted to kind of make today's show dedicated. Do you have anything else you want to add about him, or?
It's a sad day.
It is. It's just all the memories. Like, that's one of the bands that when I look back on some great times in my life, when I met my wife and when I, went to my first big party, or when I was hanging out with friends that I remember fondly, there was always Van Halen music in the background.
As is right now.
Yeah.
We're listening to a little Pound Cake here. And
Sammy era. This is a great intro in the song. His guitar, this was like an onslaught. In this song, the guitar playing is just crazy. Rest in peace, Eddie Van Halen.
He's in a better place than he did. All right, everyone have a good night.
Well, we'll talk tomorrow.